show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get it started. Yeah,
get your boots ready. We're about to go on a trip where we wrestle, nobody settling or calling it quits. You're here for the grit, betcha this stuff is amazing. You're stumbling, welcome to the bump in the apron. Step into it, the hardest part of the ring. Here to bring fun, yeah, in this art he is king. It's the best thing, making sure you don't tap out. Don't go soft with the hardest podcast out. And it's not just another one, it's clear. Off the rest, in this content, none contest. Take the nonsense off the steps. You know it's nothing but pure gems when it's coming off the chest. Get it? Now it's time to sit and relax. Get your mind blown away, ain't no skipping this track. Have you paying more attention, no listening gap. Get everything I ever wanted, no giving it back.
It's the hardest. Talk around, don't disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get started. It's the hardest. Talk around, don't disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get started. It's the hardest. Talk around, don't disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get it started.
Get your boots ready. We're about to go on a trip where we wrestle, nobody settling or calling it quits. You're here for the grit, betcha this stuff is amazing. You're stumbling, welcome to the bump in the apron. Step into it, the hardest part of the ring. Here to bring fun, yeah, in this art he is king. It's the best thing, making sure you don't tap out. Don't go soft with the hardest podcast out. And it's not just another one, it's clear. Off the rest, in this content, none contest. Take the nonsense off the steps. You know it's nothing but pure gems when it's coming off the chest. Get it? Now it's time to sit and relax. Get your mind blown away, ain't no skipping this track. Have you paying more attention, no listening gap. Get everything I ever wanted, no giving it back.
It's the hardest. Talk around, don't disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get started. It's the hardest. Talk around, don't disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get started. It's the hardest. Talk around, don't disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get it started.
Get your boots ready. We're about to go on a trip where we wrestle, nobody settling or calling it quits. You're here for the grit, betcha this stuff is amazing. You're stumbling, welcome to the bump in the apron. Step into it, the hardest part of the ring. Here to bring fun, yeah, in this art he is king. It's the best thing, making sure you don't tap out. Don't go soft with the hardest podcast out. And it's not just another one, it's clear. Off the rest, in this content, none contest. Take the nonsense off the steps. You know it's nothing but pure gems when it's coming off the chest. Get it? Now it's time to sit and relax. Get your mind blown away, ain't no skipping a track. Have you paying more attention, no listening gap. Get everything I ever wanted, no giving it back. Yeah.
It's the hardest. Talk around, don't disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can hide it. Let's get started. It's the hardest. Talk around, don't disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can hide this. Let's get started. It's the hardest. Talk around, don't disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can hide this. Let's get started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can hide this. Let's get started.
Started. Yeah.
It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can hide this. Let's get started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can hide this. Let's get started. Yeah.
Get your boots ready. We're about to go on a trip where we wrestle nobody settling or calling it quits. You're here for the grit. Betcha this stuff is amazing. You're stumbling. Welcome to the bump in the apron. Step into it. The hardest part of the ring. Here to bring fun, yeah. In this art, he is king. It's the best thing. Making sure you don't tap out. Don't go soft with the hardest podcast out. And it's not just another one. It's clear. Off the rest. In this content, none contest. Take the nonsense off the steps. You know it's nothing but pure gems when it's coming off the chest. Get it? Now it's time to sit and relax. Get your mind blown away, ain't no skipping a track. Have you paying more attention, no listening gap. Get everything I ever wanted, no giving it back. Yeah.
It's the hardest. Talk around, don't disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can hide it. Let's get started. It's the hardest. Talk.
Oh, well, hello there. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Are we live? God damn, we're live, pal. How's everybody doing today? Happy Saturday. We're here, folks. We're here. Is this music? This music sounds loud in my earphones. Earphones? I think it's fine. We're here, folks. The finale of the hardest promotion of 1996. I'm so bright. Jesus Christ. I was not this bright 2 seconds ago when I checked. Let me darken myself up. If that's still okay in 2024. It's a little better. But yes, the finale. So if you've been following along, first of all, the Apron Bump podcast. If you're not familiar, cover lots of different timelines in pro wrestling. Lots of old school stuff. Companies big and small across 4 different decades. One of the timelines that I chronologically relive are the wrestling wars of the mid-90s. This is WWF, WCW, and ECW. Covering every single, pay-per-view / super show in the case of ECW. Covering all these shows chronologically to see the ebbs and flows of wrestling, the evolution of the product, people jumping back and forth from company to company, seeing how the product evolves, how the tone and the tenor of everything evolves. It's a fascinating journey, and I suggest if you are not caught up, in the description, I got a link to apronbump.com where it'll take you to all of these episodes that I've chronologically covered with various podcast hosts. Can't talk today. And yeah, so it's a good old time. Listen wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as right here on the youtube.com, or if you're listening on X, go to YouTube and watch it, I guess. I don't know. But we got a lot to get into today. So we might as well, again, the sun. See, my backyard, I have a window right here, right? and I have a bunch of trees and shit. And there's one like gap where the sun just burns my face, and I look very Caucasian right now, which I'm mostly Caucasian, but it really just amplifies it. Fuck it. We'll let it ride. But let's get right into it, shall we? Let's get right into it. First of all, 96. It's been a journey. Look, I've been on this timeline for probably almost closer to 2 years now, so I've probably forgotten more than I remember. But man, January we got Royal Rumble, we got Super Brawl, we got ECW's doing stuff like ECW, and we'll talk through it. But I think in general, right? When I look at these three companies, which by the way, I'll just pull up because I keep pointing to my screen. These three companies, right? We got a current score, which we'll talk about. It's not locked in, right? I have to hit the lock it in button, which is what this is. Once we lock it in, there's no unlocking. We're not jailbreaking it. Once we hit this button, it's binding. That's it. So, okay, when I think of these three companies, right? WWF, look, you could see that they have the highest score, and it's for a reason, right? Their pay-per-view events have mostly been pretty good. They had a really hot middle of the year. The end points were a little lackluster, but they've been consistent, if nothing else. I think the wrestling holds up. I think you got a lot of fun characters, a lot of characters that were injected maybe late year. That really helped the product. And again, we'll talk about that as we go through this. But WWF, if I had one word, it'd be consistent. They've had top to bottom some really fun characters. Well, I shouldn't say top to bottom. They've had some fun characters. And, yeah. WCW, the story here is obviously the MWO, which was injected into the product in the middle of the year. It was June or July. I forget. But, it's really a story. With WCW, it's a story of pre-NWO and post-NWO. Kind of splits the year in half. Pre-NWO, this company was hot garbage. You had the cruiserweights, right? Which gave you some good stuff. And then you had some other stuff. You had the Dungeon of Doom. You had the, what'd they call it? The triple cage. What was that? The Ultimate Solution, the Dungeon, the Doomsday Cage. Doomsday Cage. That's what it was called. A lot of that. You had Macho Man and Ric Flair kind of fiddle fucking there for a little bit for whatever reason. Ric Flair stealing Elizabeth, and it's the whole thing, right? It all becomes inconsequential by the end of the year. But WCW had the cruiserweights, and they had the star power. Probably the biggest star power of any company. Let me just double check something here. Bear with me, folks. Okay. We're good. ECW, also pretty consistent. They got better towards the end of the year. I would say ECW this year suffered from the all the star power taken from them from WCW. They got Eddie taken from them, Benoit, Dean, and it feels like they've been kind of spinning their wheels this year, I would say. In some ways, right? But again, this is just kind of an overview of these companies. We'll get into the nitty-gritty. First things first, why don't we explain this scoreboard? Huh? Let's explain the scoreboard for any people that are uncultured and have not been following the Apron Bump podcast. So, the hardest promotion battle of 1996. We pit these three companies against each other. We have a scoring system here in place. And by the end of the year, whoever has the most points at the end of the year is deemed the hardest promotion of 1996. And most importantly, I will purchase a championship belt of the company that wins this. So it's very high stakes, right? Extremely high stakes. We're not bullshitting around here. This means a lot to each company. Paul Lee, Eric Bischoff, Vince McMahon, I'm sure they're all huddled around a computer or a mobile device somewhere, watching this, sweating, itching, chafing. They're all thinking to themselves, hardest part of the ring. Tell me that I'm the hardest of 1996. Well, we'll get there. Vince, Paul, Eric, relax, all right? Relax. We're going to get there. So the scoreboard. Let's go over the scoreboard for anyone that is unfamiliar. This first section here, tier list. This is based on the pay-per-view quality or the event quality. We look at the best pay-per-view and the worst pay-per-view. You know what? Actually, first let's just go here. So after every podcast episode, I review these shows individually. So there is an episode on every single one of these events, talking about them in totality. And after each review, when it's fresh in my mind, I give it a grade from a scale of S to F. S being one of the best shows of all time, F being a show that I'd rather circumcise myself for the second time than watch. There's a few of those. There's a few of those you can see here in the beginning. Super Brawl, ECW, Big Apple, Blizzard Blast. I mean, the name alone was probably the reason. Just Another Night. I'll tell you what I remember about these shows, right? These worst ofs. Super Brawl. The main event was Giant versus Hulk Hogan. And this is not monster trucks. So you don't even have the comedy of the monster trucks. You don't have the comedy of the sumo battle, people getting thrown off buildings, the Yeti coming out and cornholing Hulk Hogan. You don't have any of that. You just have a boring wrestling match between babyface Hulk Hogan wearing jeans and the Giant. I think One Man Gang was on this show as well, fighting for the U.S. title. Couldn't tell you anything else, but it was just a very boring, inconsequential program. Very bad. ECW Big Apple Blizzard Blast. I believe this is the show that was almost like a highlight package. So it was just very, very poorly put together and not a lot of great wrestling to accompany it. So Just Another Night, I think, was a fan cam show. So it was like a live event, but it was not good. Not good. But then we have WrestleMania, which gave us our first A grade of the year. Of course, main evented by Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart. First ever 60-minute Iron Man match for the WWF Championship. A very divisive match, a very polarizing match. We talk about it on the podcast episode, but a weirdly paced main event, but a hot finish. But you also got the backlot brawl. You got a pretty hot 6-man to open the show. You got Diesel versus Undertaker, which was great. I think there's something I'm forgetting. But overall, just a really good show. Just overall, a lot of these grades too, you know, it's not so much looking at it on paper. It's like, how did I feel watching it, right? And when I was watching WrestleMania, I was having a good old time. Fun show. Fun show. I think there was only one more A that we gave this year, and that was Fall Brawl 1996 from WCW. Of course, War Games. Closing that bad boy out. We have a lot of NWO stories afoot. Also some fun like DDP, Eddie Guerrero. The undercard was really good. culminated to a fun finish. It was just a really well-paced, fun show to watch. And then everything. You can see there's a lot of F's in the beginning, and we got some D's at the end. But the middle was pretty consistent, right? So 1996, the bookends were not great, but it fleshed out okay. So what does that mean, everybody? So we roll all these grades together, right? And we see which company had the highest average grade. Which, as you can see here, is WWF. Just by a smidge. WWF has the highest average grade of their events, which ultimately, it's like everything culminates to these events. We need to put a lot of stake into that, and we do. And that's 6 points for the best overall average grade. So that's something that is... We're not going to mess with the grades. You know, a lot of these, it's been years since I've watched. So we're not going to mess with the grades. This is pretty much locked in, right? So I think we can maybe even highlight this. Highlight this green to lock her in. Best and worst pay-per-view. I guess we don't have to lock these in because there's 2 A's, right? I could be swayed. And by the way, people in the chat, feel free to try to sway me. If you think Fall Brawl was better than WrestleMania, let me know. Or if you think another show is better. If you think another show should have been an A or an S that wasn't, holler at me. So we won't lock these in quite yet. We'll lock everything in later in the program. We're going to do some research. I'll tell you what we're going to do, gang. I'm going to run down. By the way, I'm like nasally and coffee. I don't know what happened. I'm going to put in a cough drop maybe. I think I'm allergic to the outdoors now. I mowed the lawn yesterday, and now I'm all fucked up. It just set everything into a tizzy. My head's stuffed up. My chest is stuffed up. Got polyps on my asshole. There's a lot going on. And it's all due to this goddamn grass, these pine trees. Rabbits outside. There's raccoons just walking around in the daytime. I don't know what's going on. Forgive my cough drop. What are we talking about here? Oh yes, chat. Feel free to sway me. That's what you're here for. Because we gotta lock everything in. We gotta make sure everything is taken into account. And that's what I was doing. So I'm gonna run down what we're gonna do today. We're gonna look at this current scoreboard. We're gonna see where we're standing. Right? I got a pen. Serious business. We're gonna look at the alternatives, right? So I got some tabs here. Best match, worst match, best worst wrestler, best worst character. We have the current scoreboard, but we're gonna look at the alternatives. We're gonna look at who's on the bubble, and we're gonna make an educated decision. How educated? Or why is it educated? Or I'm gonna look at input that I've gotten from the community. We've got some voice messages, some messages just on social media, on X, on Instagram, what have you. We're gonna see what the community has to say, and of course, feel free to drop anything in chat that you would like in terms of this. Matthew Birch chiming in. What's up, Matt? Personally, I think Fall Brawl 1996 was my favorite show of 1996. But I can definitely understand why WrestleMania 12 is your pick. Yeah, man, I could be swayed. I could be swayed. Because as I was rattling off WrestleMania earlier, I was like, man, there's not that much good stuff, but we'll get back to that. We'll get back to that. I did a little bit of research, right, going into this, because generally with these podcast episodes, I don't do any research. I just go off vibes, right? These here are all vibes. I don't think about these before the recording. I hit record and then I start thinking. So you get my entire thought process on these podcast episodes, and this is the result of that. But we're gonna look more into it. I got some, stuff pulled from the internet to maybe wrap this whole year in a bow. Maybe look at some things that I missed before. But we'll get to that. Then we're gonna finalize these picks. I'm gonna hit this bad boy. Oh, I almost hit it. Ah! Oh, I'm gonna hit. Oh, well, we like to have fun here. We like to have fun here. But yeah, and then we'll lock it in. We'll determine the winner, and then maybe I'll do a little shopping, huh? For a little championship belt, perhaps. I'm probably not gonna buy it on stream, but I might make a decision. And then maybe we'll talk about 1997. I'm gonna make some changes to this, right? For one, these pay-per-view grades, it's gonna be numerical. Next year, I'm thinking maybe out of 100, grade school style. We're gonna give these shows grades out of 100 instead of letters to make it a little more granular, a little more accurate. Because I didn't do pluses and minuses here. Like, there's definitely some C shows that are way better than other C shows, is how I'll put it. So I think that'll make this a little more accurate. Might fiddle with some of the point values here, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah, let's just go over the rationale that I've used to come up with these answers. So, best pay-per-view, worst pay-per-view, that's pretty simple. I just went with an A for the best and F for the worst. All vibes. In-ring. So we got this in-ring section here. Best overall is just across the board. It's their TV, it's their pay-per-views. Overall, which company has the best in-ring product? The best bell-to-bell wrestling? This takes into account the quality of it, the diversity of it, tag teams, lower card, upper card, what have you. Currently, we're tracking WWF as the best. Reason being, and again, chat, let me know if you disagree. My logic here is that WCW has the cruiserweights, which is probably the best quality stuff this year. But that is a small percentage of their show, and that is all they have. I shouldn't say it's all they have. Because towards the end of the year, things started to ramp up with, Lex Luger got really hot. You got your Benoits and your Eddies and your Jarretts. They become big focal points. And there's more spotlight put on that type of wrestling, which in the last episode I dropped, Starrcade, that was kind of theme, right? This hard-hitting, gritty style is probably even better than the cruiserweights. So again, that's something that I could be swayed on, potentially. ECW is I'll tell you this. ECW, their bread and butter here is their storytelling. It's also the unique presentation they have. Obviously, the hardcore, the blood, all that shit. WWF and WCW aren't doing that, but I'll tell you what, ECW, it's not all blood and guts. And that's something that we always hear, in the documentaries and all that shit. Oh, it wasn't all blood and guts. We had, Eddies and Benoits. But there's no Eddie and Benoit this year. Or very little of them. ECW has a lot of just wrestling on the show. You turn on any of these ECW events that I've covered, there's not that much blood. Maybe that doesn't come until 97, 98. I don't know. But a lot of weapons, a lot of brawling in the crowd type stuff. So the matches themselves in vacuums are generally not that great. ECW is a vibes promotion. So they're not the best in ring, is what I'm saying. So that's why I'm tracking WWF as the best. But I could be swayed to WCW. I'm thinking about that. We'll come back to this, right? After we look at all the research, all the community input. We'll come back to that. Best match and worst match were both from WWF In Your House 7, Good Friends, Better Enemies. Best match, Shawn vs. Diesel for the WWF title. No DQ match. Just great energy to this match. As Diesel comes out for his entrance, and then Shawn comes out. They're staring each other. They're staring bullets into each other's heads. The intensity matches this build-up throughout the entire match. You got announced table spots, which you weren't seeing in WWF at this point. Chair spots, Diesel rips off the leg of Mad Dog Vachon. The ending stretch to this match was incredible. It was just a very fun match from start to finish. And we'll talk about some of the alternatives later, but that's where we're at. Ultimate Warrior versus Goldust. If you've seen this match, you'll know that there's nothing much to say about it. It's, the bell rings. There's a lot of hoo-ha going on. I believe Warrior, he runs Goldust out of the ring, and then Goldust puts on his wig, starts smoking a cigar or some shit, puts on his hat. It's very bad. It's a very bad match. Not a good match. Not only is it bad, it's not good. Worst of the year, as far as I'm concerned. But some of the community threw out some matches that could be worse. We'll just have to find out. Roster and star power. Best overall roster, I have WCW. Why is that hardest part of the ring? Well, because top to bottom, let's look at it. At the top, you got your Hogans, Macho Man, Ric Flair, Sting, Lex Luger, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash. Lots of star power up top. You got your cruiserweights, which give you a whole other layer, a whole different spice, a different palette to your roster. You got Ray, you got Dean, Juventud. Juventud, is he there yet? I don't know if he's there yet. No, he is. You got Psychosis, Ultimo Dragon, right? What's the guy's name? Johnny Graffiti. You got the heavy star power up top. You got the cruiserweights that give you that high flying action, to open the shows. And then in the middle, you got your Benoits, Eddie, Jarrett, Arn Anderson. You got the Four Horsemen, just in general. You got the tag team division, which is, not great, but it's something, You got Ming and Barbarian out there doing, right? Who's with me? So yeah, WCW, I'm tracking them as the best overall roster because they just have the best top to bottom quality. Well-rounded, you could say. ECW, they got not a lot of changes throughout the year. Really just people that have been taken away. Not a lot of... they've gotten Chris Candido. Shane Douglas... Was Dean Douglas last year? He came back last year, right? So they got Chris Candido. But they lost Cactus Jack. They lost Benoit. They lost Eddie. They lost Ray. So they're not really in the running there as far as I'm concerned. So WCW, best roster. But WWF, I don't even know if we talked about WWF. So they got a lot of good stuff up top, right? Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart. Sure, we throw in Vader and Bulldog. You got Owen. Owen and Bulldog, great team, right? Or I should say great individuals that happen to be in a team. They bring in Mark Merrow. They bring in Mick Foley, which is huge. Steve Austin comes in, I think, at the beginning of this year. So they've made a lot of good additions. But I think they're very top-heavy. Right? You got your top two stories that are really good. Mankind and Undertaker. That's a feud that has spanned pretty much since WrestleMania through the rest of the year. Which has been mostly good. Shawn Michaels, his in-ring quality speaks for itself. Every match that he's in is at least good, oftentimes great. But the stories associated to those matches are not super strong. He's a babyface. He's got Jose Lothario with him. not super captivating. Until Sid comes along, who comes out with a House of Fire, takes the title from him. That's pretty good stuff. But then afterwards, we end the year with Sid versus Bret Hart, which is kind of a wet blanket match. But overall, at the top, you have Steve Austin and Bret. I mean, come on. You know, we got the Survivor Series match. We're not at their famous WrestleMania 13 match yet. But the story leading up to it is great. Shawn and Bret starting to build. Good stuff. Top of the card is great in WWF. Everything else, I mean, the guns explode. You got Bart versus Billy on Raw. You got TL Hopper versus Crush. What else? Savio Vega versus fucking Jerry Lawler. Like, yeah, this Goldust Jerry Lawler feud, which is does not age well. But yeah, my point is WCW has the best roster, and as far as I'm concerned, due to top to bottom across the board being quality in a bunch of different ways. Except tag team. I'll say ECW has done tag team wrestling the best among these three companies, but I don't think that's enough to warrant the best roster. Matthew Birch chiming in. The more you talk about it, I honestly think the WCW roster at this time might be the best rosters, one of the best rosters of any major promotion any year, not just 1996. Such a well-rounded roster. I can't disagree with you, Matthew Birch. Can't disagree with you. It's just mind-boggling. You watch wrestling at this time period, even in like early 2000s, it's like, God, the stuff we were getting on weekly TV. Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer. It's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah. So, Wrestler of the Year, Mankind. So he started the year in ECW. And then worked his way to WWF around March, April. As the character of Mankind, which was a departure of the Cactus Jack character. Very different. Well, kind of different, right? Still unhinged, but just a different flavor of unhinged, I guess. And you know, you're watching at the time, you see what they did with Shane Douglas. Neutered him, right? You see what Public Enemy is doing or not doing on WCW. You might be like, oh, WWF, or when you leave ECW, you just go to die. You get paid more, but your character takes a hit. You might have thought this about Cactus Jack. You might have thought this about Mick Foley. But by golly, did Mick take this Mankind character and run with it. Character-wise, perhaps the best of the year. But not only was his character strong, I mean, it was aggressive, it was a risk, but it worked. Especially in pairing with The Undertaker, it just amplified it. But not only was the character work great, not only was the stories he was involved in great, the matches, dude. I mean, first of all, Mind Games. From In Your House, Mind Games. With Shawn Michaels in the main event. Arguably the match of the year. Arguably. I don't have it as best match of the year. A lot of it is due to it not having a finish. And overall, I just think Shawn and Diesel was start to finish better. You know, per second, I think the energy was better. But Shawn and Mankind is definitely something where if you told me that's the match of the year, I'm not going to argue with you. So, and then of course his matches with The Undertaker, his Buried Alive match was awesome. The Boiler Room Brawl, just the normal matches they had with each other. Ranged from good to awesome. So Mankind, the in-ring, the character work, both in ECW and WWF, by the way, because we also got to take into account what he did in ECW. Stuff with Mikey Whipwreck was pretty good. Great promo work in ECW as well. The reason we have him marked as WWF is because that's where he ended the year. That's where he made the most impact. So unfortunately, a lot of the labor of ECW went into the fruits that WWF picked off the tree and bit into. You know what I'm saying? So, Mankind Wrestler of the Year, where we're at. Worst Wrestler of the Year, Ultimate Warrior. So this is something that I've brought up before on some of my podcast episodes. The stuff that Warrior did this year was atrocious. It was bad. There's no two ways about it. His feud with Goldust, as you can see by worst match of the year, terrible. Just derailed Goldust's momentum, by the way. He had never really recovered from it. And then he had a shitty feud with Jerry Lawler that really went nowhere. Just gave us bad TV. He squashed Hunter Hearst Helmsley at WrestleMania. Not a bad moment, right? You know, we can't discount the moment. The pop, brother. I think it did more harm than good because Warrior would just kick rocks after a few months and wouldn't be seen in that company again until a day before he died. So, but the thing here is that, you know, while Warrior, what he did was bad, the quality of what he did was bad. Was it substantial enough? Because like I said, it only lasted a few months. Was it substantial enough to be deemed the worst of the year? I'm willing to hear people out. You know, we got some lists that I got pulled up that we'll look at here in a second. So I can be swayed. This is something that I could pretty easily be swayed here, but just off my gut, I think Warrior is the worst. That's where I'm at. Out of ring. So you got your gimmicks, your characters, your promos, your storylines. Best overall, ECW. Talked about this a little bit earlier. While the match quality, you know, match to match, second to second, wasn't great generally, the stories associated to these matches made it fun to watch the matches, if that makes any sense. Shane Douglas and the Pitbulls. Captivating stuff. I mean, Pitbull number 1 legit breaks his neck, has a halo drilled into his head. Shane Douglas takes his girl, kisses her in front of him, takes this halo that's bolted into Pitbull's head, shakes him around, pushes him on the ground. I mean, come on. Come on. The Dudley Boys, the internal strife. Devon comes in. Him and Big Dick have a power struggle. Devon and Bubba have many battles. Chubby Dudley's there. He's eating chips. Shout out, Bay. Just good stuff all around with that story. Sandman and Raven. Come on. Something that is become very controversial, very, what's the word? Infamous, I guess. You got the cross. The segment that drove Kurt Angle away from ECW. Sandman getting put on the cross with barbed wire. But beyond that, the whole story with Raven psychologically abducting Sandman's child and his ex-wife. Just shocking stuff. Captivating television. And some good matches that came out of that too. You got Tommy Dreamer. He's kind of been bouncing around with like Brian Lee. Towards the end of the year, he's embroiled in a feud with Shane Douglas. You know, a couple matches here with Raven and Sandman and stuff like that. So he's been a kind of a utility player this year, it feels like. But some good promos and stuff from him. So, what else? The Eliminators and the Gangstas. I mean, I said this earlier. The tag team division in ECW is unmatched. The Eliminators are, from an in-ring perspective, the most fun tag team to watch of the year. If there was like a category for tag team of the year, I'd probably throw the Eliminators on there. In fact, not even probably. Definitely. Definitely the Eliminators would be the tag team of the year. By a mile. Their feud with the Gangstas, awesome. There's some point of the year where New Jack was like, I think it was like his niece or something, got shot and killed. I don't know if this is real, if it was a story, whatever the case is. And New Jack was like, look, I need to win these tag team titles because I need money to pay for the funeral. And then the Gangstas won the tag team titles. You see New Jack backstage. He's got the stack of money. He's like, I'm gonna buy that baby a casket. I finally did it. This is all I ever wanted. I gotta get my family out the projects. And now I got the ability to do that. And then the goddamn Perry Saturn and Cronus storm New Jack. They beat him down. They take his money. And they say, and Perry says, I forget what exactly he says. He's basically like, fuck that kid. Fuck his casket. I'm like, are you kidding me? So awesome stuff. That's ECW, man. 96. Not all of it's great, but it's all, dare I say, extreme. But yeah, so ECW got the best overall out of ring quality stuff. Promos too. I mean, the grittiness of ECW promos. Taz, come on now. The rise of Taz and the build to Taz and Sabu. That's where 97 starts, and boy howdy are they gonna start hot. So I could keep rattling off stuff, but that being said, best character / storyline of the year, WCW. While WCW from top to bottom might not have the strongest collection of stories, the NWO has taken over wrestling. I mean, you got the BWO now in ECW as a parody of it. WWF brought in fake Diesel, fake Razor as a, I guess, kind of a retort to the NWO. That's how impactful NWO is. You turn on WCW late in 96, whole crowd is wearing NWO shirts. You got NWO signs. They're white hot. Very novel concept at the time. Very gritty, but very based in reality, which is something, we're coming out of the very cartoony era of wrestling. So it was a breath of fresh air. Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, hopping over from WWF was huge. Hulk Hogan, the heel turn, speaks for itself. Best heel turn of all time. And then the stories, we talked about Fall Brawl. All these stories that come out of it with Sting. Where does he lie? The Horsemen trying to take down the NWO. You got Eric Bischoff, the head of WCW, joining them. If you're not with us, you're against us. You got people joining in, try to save their jobs. Just all the beatdown segments. Who could forget Kevin Nash, lawn darting Rey Mysterio into a trailer. That type of stuff. I mean, tremendous stuff. Tremendous stuff. We'll go over some alternatives later, but... And then worse is Jerry Lawler. His feud with Ultimate Warrior, feud with Jake Roberts, overall commentary. Just nothing he's involved in is good, is basically where I'm at. And he's very prominent for no reason. It's like, Lawler, stick to commentary. You're not that good at that yet, but stick there. We don't need you in the ring. And then this last section, which we have not filled in yet, but we will today. Excitement going into 1997. So now that we've reached the end of 96, now we can fill this in. I guess I'll fill it in now, and then we'll finalize it later, right? What's my first gut instinct? Excitement going into 1997. There's a lot to consider. NWO's going hot. Is Giant with them? Is Giant against them? WWF, you got Shawn and Brett is really, the seeds are being planted there. Steve Austin still very much in the picture. Mankind and Undertaker, I guess that's still happening. ECW, you got Shane Douglas, some Pitbulls, and Ravens champion. Kind of the triple threat starting to be formed with Shane Douglas and Chris Candido. Excitement going into 1997. I'll tell you this, WWF and WCW kind of ended the year with not great shows, right? We go back to these grades. I mean, Starrcade was fine, right? B. But World War III and In Your House 12, not great. The NWO was hot, guys. I think the NWO, you know, putting yourself in the mind of watching live, right? Because that's what this all is. We're not taking hindsight into account or anything. NWO was hot. WCW is the most like anything can happen promotion. Well, more so than WWF, for sure. So it's really between WCW and ECW, and I think ECW is, like I said, they're kind of treading water a little bit. Nothing. You do have Taz and Sabu approaching. We want the Pitbulls to get their revenge on Shane Douglas. Sandman and Raven. Will Sandman get his child back? It's between WCW and ECW. WCW, you got DDP getting white hot. Sting. I think I'm going to go WCW here, guys. I think WCW takes it for now. It's not finalized yet. We got to hit the button, right? But I think with WCW, I think alone, just NWO, Sting, DDP, Cruiserweights, and Kevin Sullivan and Chris Benoit. I mean, they got a Lex Luger. Yeah, I think WCW's got this. I think WCW, and we haven't even talked about Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan. I guess it's a hot feud at the time, so I think WCW has it. So, well, let's take a. What do we got from the community? Let's see if I can pull this up here. I'm gonna go on Twitter here. All right, here we go. Because I asked my followers, just the wrestling community at large, a few questions here. Let's see what they had to say. Here we go. Among these companies, what was the best event of 1996? Marcus, from the World Elite Podcast, says, tough one. Probably WrestleMania 12 or Fall Brawl 1996, which we talked about earlier. Just kind of confirms. Sometimes I just need my vibes confirmed, right? Sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about, right? But it's good to hear people agree. What else here? I put out a poll You know what? Let's see here. Share my screen here. Among these companies, which wrestling company had the best stories and characters overall in 1996? WCW. Starkly being voted at the top here with 60, and I think that's probably attributed to the NWO. ECW is actually in last here, but here's the thing. I think ECW is a little more niche than... I mean, it obviously is more so than WWF and WCW. So I'm willing to bet people aren't as familiar with the stories happening in 1996 with ECW as they are with NWO and with, you know, Shawn and Brett, Taker and Mankind. But I'll take this into consideration. A lot of people think the NWO is probably enough to justify that WCW overall has the best stories. Because that is a thread that kind of occurs throughout the entire shows, right? You turn on a Nitro, you turn on a pay-per-view, everything kind of stems from the NWO. So while that is technically one thing, it kind of seeps into everything. It's a trickle-down deal here, so that's something to consider. Worst match of 1996. Uncensored, Dungeon of Doom, the Doomsday Cage. Coming at us from SCW Steve. To me, man, that's one of those matches where it's like, it's so bad, it's good, you know? I think it's a very bad match, but I think it's fun in a weird way. So I wouldn't say it's the worst of the year. It's bottom 5 probably, but not the very worst. Joseph Taylor says Shawn Michaels versus Vader from SummerSlam 1996, and I get why. This match essentially killed off Vader in any pursuit of the world title, any pursuit of the main event picture that he had was killed when Shawn Michaels stomped him in the head. Stupid, stupid. No, that's Randy Orton. What did he say? Move! Move! That's what Shawn said. But the match itself wasn't bad. I understand why you would say this, but the match was not bad, in my opinion. Outside of that one botch. Well, I'll say this. Maybe it was bad, but it wasn't the worst. I'll put it that way. Jerry Lawler versus Jake Roberts coming at us from the Tipsy Observer. Not good. Definitely one of the worst stories. This all attributes to why we are tracking Jerry Lawler as the worst of the year. But the match itself, from what I remember, wasn't terrible. Like, it's just as a wrestling match, not bad, right? I mean, you have this portion of the match here that he has pictured where Lawler, you know, pours some sort of liquor onto Roberts' head. That's not good. But I get it, right? It plays into the story. So I hear you, Tipsy Observer. I don't know if I agree with that. Rosencoaster at Kicking Out 2 suggests that maybe the worst match of the year is Steve Mongo McMichael versus Joe Gomez at Bash at the Beach 1996. I'll tell you this, Rosencoaster, that's a match that I did not consider until now. But you pose a very good argument. That was a awful match, dude. You know what? Was it awful though, or was it just boring? I remember it being a very boring match. I think it was like 9 minutes and felt like 50. Two guys that kind of look like each other. Neither of them are particularly good. No stakes. Just a boring, for no reason match. That is something that I would, here, I'll pull this up here. Match alternatives. Worst match. So we're tracking Gold Dust first Warrior in your house 7. Joe Gomez versus Mongo at the beach. I think it's between those two. I'll throw Doomsday Cage in there. Ooh. I'll throw Doomsday Cage in there. And we're gonna come back to this when we finalize the scoreboard. Best match. So we're tracking what? HBK versus Diesel. Could do Mankind. Did we even get to that part? I don't even think we got to that part yet. So let's see. I think I asked what was the best match here. Best match. So your name here at Tally FOW says it's a toss-up between Sabu and RVD and Ray versus Dean. One of the Mankind matches, if one of them has a spot where he goes head first into the table, is an honorable mention. I think that happened in Sean versus Mankind. I could be wrong. Sabu and RVD. I think that's something that I omitted in talking about ECW earlier that I should not have. Is great stuff. From an in-ring perspective, probably some of the best stuff ECW put out the entire year. Ray Dean. Here, so I'll put Sabu versus RVD. Honestly, they faced each other like 3 times, and I couldn't tell you which shows they happened at, but they were all kind of similar. So we'll just bucket everything into one. Ray versus Dean, I believe. I forget what show exactly. They had one match in particular that was really good. Was it Bash at the Beach, maybe? I think it might have been. Because I know they had a match at Halloween Havoc. But they had a match before that I think was better. I think it was Bash at the Beach. It might have been Great American Bash. It might have been Uncensored. I don't know. But we'll consider that. We'll consider that. Let's see. Is there anything else? Sean versus Brett. Tipsy Observer comes back here. Says that Sean and Brett Iron Man match. WrestleMania 12 was the best match of the year. I don't agree. I think it's a good match. I think too much of this match is shit, though. It has a great last 10, 15 minutes. But unfortunately, there's 45, 50 minutes of that leading up to it, which is just boring chin locks. It's a new concept. I admire them for tackling this new concept in the main event of WrestleMania, of all things. The story all makes sense, right? It's Sean and his flamboyance and his high flying and all that stuff, his high energy type of style versus Brett's grounded style. You got Sean trying to match Brett's style, trying to pace himself to not burn himself out in this match. Like, the story all makes sense, but the match, I don't know if it's good enough to be the best of the year. I don't think I put this above Sean and Diesel. I'll put it that way. SCW Steve says Shawn Michaels versus Mankind at Mind Games. But he says his vote ultimately goes to Ray versus Psychosis at Bash at the Beach. Very good match. In fact, I think that's good enough to put on the alternatives tab. I don't know if I spelled this right. But we get the idea, right? Ray has a... I'll tell you this. Rey Mysterio has a strong collection of matches this year. Potentially could be Wrestler of the Year. So we're tracking Mankind as Best Wrestler of the Year. Could also be Rey Mysterio. I'll put Shawn Michaels there as well. Bama Dave chimes in. Says he's going to go with HBK versus Bret Hart Iron Man match. We just talked about it. I get it. I get why people like this match. Great moment to end it. Just overall, second to second, I don't think this match was the best of the year. Top 5, maybe. But not number 1. Not number 1. Chris Arcter says, Diesel versus HBK was my favorite. But honestly, I might have to go with HBK versus Mankind. Dean versus Ray at Havoc was tight, but I think Ultimo versus Ray at World War III was better. I didn't love Ray versus Ultimo. I'm going to be honest. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. But I don't think that's among Ray's best of the year. Ray versus Dean was good. And any Ray versus Dean Malenko match is going to be awesome. It's just how it is. But he says Diesel versus HBK was his favorite. It's also mine. HBK versus Mankind. We talked about this earlier. I just think the fact that HBK and Mankind didn't have a finish, I think is just a straw that breaks the camel's back there. And I think it's what sways me slightly, ever so slightly, to Diesel and HBK. But ultimately, it's WWF anyway, so for the purposes of this, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, so that's where we're at. Anything else? Anything else? I asked everybody which company had the best in-ring product overall. And again, WCW comes out the leader here. Not as dramatically. It's pretty close. But WCW with 38.6%, ECW with 33.3%, WWF with 28.1%. I think this is the second time in a row that these polls, like the last place company is who I have as first place. Which is very interesting. Greg Morgan chimes in, talking about the in-ring quality, right? Good mic work. Says that cruiserweights gave WCW the edge, but take them away, and WCW and WWE were probably equal, in my opinion. WCW gained Hall, Nash, and Pac. WWE gained Austin, Mero, Foley, Vader, Simmons, and made a star out of Sid. WWE had the overall best in HBK, but WCW had the star power. So kind of what I've been saying, right? And Greg, I mean, he was there, you know. He's 87 years old, so he was there watching live. So he knows what he's talking about. He was there, you know, present at a lot of these shows. So I put a lot of stake in what my boy, Good Mic Work, says. And he's kind of confirming what I've been saying, in a sense, right? Adding some more context and guys like, you know, Farouk coming in. How they made a star out of Sid. Essentially saying that WCW got the edge with the cruiserweights. And that's the question. Is the cruiserweights, are they enough to justify giving WCW the best in-ring? Cruiserweights alone, is that enough to turn this WWF into WCW? Right here. Perhaps. I'm thinking. Is it enough? I just think WCW, their main event picture, right? Not great. From an in-ring perspective. It's not, I mean, God damn, dude. I don't know. This is a tough one. My instinct is to keep it WWF. Tommy Austin checking in. 1997 would definitely belong to WCW. I'd still go with WWF for 1996. I'm inclined to agree with you, Tom. I'm inclined to agree. I think we're not gonna lock it in. I think WWF still has the best in-ring, just from top to bottom. On a consistent basis. We're taking into account TV, pay-per-views, all that stuff. You know, you turn on a Nitro, you're watching Greg Valentine versus fucking Dave Taylor or something. Like, what are we doing? You know, the tag team division is in shambles. So, and not every cruiserweight match is a hit. I mean, like I said, I didn't love Ray versus Ultimo. There's some matches that just aren't that great. So I don't know if cruiserweight is enough to justify putting WCW at the top. But the question is, does everything outside of the cruiserweights in WCW, is that better or worse than I'm leading on, right? Because there's some, you know, stuff with Benoit, Eddie, Macho, Flair, Arn, Lex. They got some stuff going on, but I think that's more story heavy than in ring, if that makes any sense. But I think it all ties together, so I don't know. Still on the fence with that one. Still on the fence. Patrick Damn Harris on Twitter says WCW 1996 is the greatest year of pro wrestling in the 90s. Bold statement. Bold statement. It's a fun one. It's definitely a fun one. I lived through this live, but I wasn't watching this live, so who's to say? But I feel you. I feel you, dog. I feel you, Pat. The ASP says whichever company Arn was wrestling at the time was the best in ring. You know what? You pose a good argument. Although I think Arn pretty much done wrestling after this year, right? So, but he was definitely a good. Tell you what, man. Anytime I watched an Arn Anderson match in 1996, I was locked in. Locked in. The biggest hater, 97. In terms of in-ring quality, says ECW all the way. And then he lists off some guys. Sabu, Douglas, Dreamer, Van Dam, Taz, Eliminators. A great roster, man. A great roster. Whew. I don't know, man. I don't think the matches bell to bell in ECW matched up to WWF or ECW. In general, I think the characters were stronger, but I don't think the matches were as good, personally. 95 would be a different question because you had all the cruiserweights there, basically, but now they don't. So, I think that might be it. That was all I asked. So yeah. Let's pull this up, shall we? Oh, you know what? While we're talking about community, we can't forget my boy, James Fretz, from the Fretzlemania podcast. He left us with a voice message. Now, I did not listen to this message. So, if he goes on any racial tirade... Just kidding. This is his views, not mine. Let's play this here. All right, what do we got here, Fretz? Let us know what you think.
Well, good morning, cute Kyle. At the time,
All right. It's Pretty Kyle. If you're going to give the goofy nickname, it's Pretty Kyle. It's not Cute Kyle.
I'm recording this. This is Mr. Fretz from the Fretzlemania podcast on Wrestle Addict Radio, the cure for the common wrestling podcast. And I got your breakdown of 1996 here, the hardest promotion in the ring. Of course, the WWF would absolutely kill it, especially since that disastrous year of 1995. I mean, the King of the Ring, Mabel in the main event of SummerSlam.
It's a good point. The bounce back from WWF. Got to be studied, man. Good stuff.
Oof. Man, that was quite a hard year to get through. WCW, they really only started to cook around the time the NWO came in because we started
100% agree. We talked about this pre NWO, post NWO. First 6 months or so of WCW. It's not good. Not good.
started off the year with Hulk Hogan and the Dungeon of Doom and the Triple Tier Cage with the Ultimate Solution. ECW, I mean, they were just starting to get their footing. There's no reason why they wouldn't be in last place. Well, mostly because there wasn't enough Hack Myers on the show. So I think
Absolutely tremendous point. I don't know how I've gone over an hour here and not brought up Hack Myers. That's got to be a record. The fact that ECW didn't push Hack Myers to the moon and make him world champion, it justifies why they're in last place, right? It all makes sense.
that's what should lose them a lot of points. Your best and worst match of the year, I think, are a lot of toss ups. HBK and Diesel for best is a damn good shout. Although this is biased because I'm a massive Sid mark and you and I reviewed that show, HBK and Sid from Survivor Series could be a contender for that.
I do love Sid, right? Love Sid. As we close out 1996, Sid might be the strongest character individually. Maybe. It's my favorite. I'll put it that way. I didn't love the match, though. Sid versus HBK, I thought it had a really dumb finish as well. So, but it was a cool moment. I don't think the match itself is good enough to be match of the year. Maybe top 10. Top 15. I don't know.
And speaking of shows that we reviewed, HBK and British Bulldog from In Your House, Beware of Dog.
Good match. Weird pay-per-view, but a good match. From that Beware of Dog show, I'd probably put Savio Vega versus Steve Austin above that, personally.
One or two, whatever the whatever the preference is. Your worst match, Warrior and Goldust. Now, I don't think that's an actual match that really got underway. Uh, I consider it to be more of an angle because you had the Warrior sitting down in Goldust director's chair. You had cigar smoke.
So, I hear you, Fretz. I don't necessarily disagree, but correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. Anybody in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the bell rang, and then all of the shenanigans happened, which is why I'm looking at this as a match. Also, it just, in general, took up it was so long. This wasn't like a quick 2-minute angle and whatever. It was like 20 minutes that this whole thing lasted. Seemingly. I don't know.
You had Marlena and you had Mantar, and it never really got underway, but
I forgot Mantar. I forgot fucking Mantar was involved in all of this. Jesus, tits on a cross. Whew, that just solidifies it for me, I think.
it still stunk. But if I got to go for a worst match, like from bell to bell, and that's an actual match in air quotes, The Undertaker versus Executioner from In Your House It's Time. It was not time, by the way. I mean, we all know what condition Terry Gordy was in 1996. We all saw the dark side of the ring. That was one of the hardest watches from that particular season. He didn't have it. I mean, after that
This is a good shout, by the way. I just put it on the alternatives list. That is a good shout for worst of the year.
incident on the airplane, he was never the same, and it was such a shame to see, especially after watching him in the Freebirds in the 80s and knowing what a beast he was. That was the shits, I gotta say. But
Yep.
Kyle, congrats on getting through 1996. Congrats on your
Thanks,
shiny
buddy.
new WWF championship. And now we enter 1997. You're entering the Attitude Era now, basically, and there is some good stuff as we go out through the rest of the year. I mean, WrestleMania 13, SummerSlam 97, Survivor Series. Imagine having a Canadian on your show to talk about the Montreal Screwjob. Maybe put a pin in that. And if you want me in on some other shows, maybe an ECW Barely Legal, maybe a WCW event. I don't think I've been on for a WCW event yet. I'm not going for the Penny for Your Thoughts or Matt Ritter crown yet. They deserve that honor a lot more than I do. Or even some other stuff. You want to have me on there for, hit me up. But if you want to save me for Survivor Series 97, I will patiently wait for that one. So have a good stream, Kyle. Cheers.
Cheers, buddy. Hell yeah, Frets. Appreciate you chiming in here. Go check out the Fretzelmania podcast, everybody. I've had him on several times. He's always a good boy. Always a good time having him on. Poses a lot of good arguments here. Confirms some of my stances. Also throws out some alternatives, which are very interesting. Mainly Taker versus Executioner. It's a damn good shout for worst of the year. It's still WWF, so for the purposes of this, I don't know if it matters too much. Yeah, but yeah, 97 I'm excited to get into. For sure. All right. Why don't we take a gander at some of these tabs I've pulled up here? Let's see here. Let me find it. Let me close these porn tabs here real quick. Click view. Boom. All right. So here is just kind of like it's wrestling in 1996. This is the Wikipedia here. So it's very... We're not going to go into all of this stuff, right? I thought it was kind of interesting to see some debuts here. People that debuted in 1996. The Rock. A lot of Japanese guys that unfortunately I'm not super familiar with. Adam Pearce debuted in 1996. Current Raw GM. H.C. Loke. Hell yeah, former guest of the Apron Bump. Carnage crew member. Debuted in 96. Tomohiro Ishii. Wow. For some reason, I thought I would have assumed he started wrestling earlier, but guess he debuted in 96. That's fun. This is just for giggles, I guess. People that were born in 1996. Maxwell Jacob Friedman. Born. He was birthed in this year that we're talking about. Blair Davenport. JC Jane. Riho. Oh, that's not Riho. It's a different Riho. Not the Japanese one. Marco Stunt. Indy Hartwell. Rhea Ripley. One of the biggest stars in wrestling today. Two of the biggest stars. Rhea Ripley and MJF. Both born this year. People that retired in 96. Dynamite Kid. Dick Slater. Mr. Fuji. A different Steve Regal, not that one. Wahoo McDaniel. People that unfortunately passed away in 96. You got Ray Stevens. Dick Murdoch. Among others. So we're just gonna kind of glaze over some of these tabs I've pulled up for research purposes. Tom Austin, you also debuted in 96. Congrats, buddy. Congrats. So we got some Wrestler Observer awards here, which we take these with a grain of salt, right? Let's just take a gander. Let's see what we got. What does Dave think the promotion of the year in 1996 is? I guarantee you it's not any of these three. Probably New Japan, if I had to guess. Yep. New Japan Pro Wrestling. What do we got here? What do we got here? They're matches. Match of the year, perhaps. Match of the year. Probably a Japan match. If I had to guess. Yep. All Japan Pro Wrestling. Guess maybe this isn't the maybe this isn't the source that we want this from. Wrestler of the year. What do we got? Is it Misawa probably? Kenta Kobashi. All right. US Wrestling MVP. That didn't start until 2018. Good stuff. Thanks, Dave. Best box office draw started in 97. Perfect. Perfect. Best booker. That could tell us something. 96. Paul Heyman. Okay. There we go. Dave thinks Paul Heyman was the best booker in ECW or in wrestling. Which goes to show, that's out of ring. I think that's like gimmicks and stuff, right? Tom, look, hey, John, put some goddamn respect on Johnny Ace. Tom Austin says Johnny Ace being a part of Match of the Year tells me that all I need to know. If you're not familiar, this is John Laurinaitis. But he had a run there in Japan, man. In the 90s. Dynamic dudes, right? All right. That's enough of you, Dave. So I got the rosters pulled up. So shout out SmackDownHotel.com. TheSmackDownHotel.com. A great database. You can basically go to any promotion, put in a date, and see what the roster was at that point in time, which is very fun. So I think... So we're going to look here. So here, let's go back to the scoreboard. Roster. Roster quality. Beginning of the year, midpoint, end of the year. This is going to help us really fine-tune this one right here. Best overall roster. These 4 points. We're tracking WCW, but let's see. Let's see. This WWE. Boom. All right, so this is January 1st, 1996. Let's just take a gander at the rosters. More visual. So ECW, Too Cold Scorpio, Hack Myers, Conan. Conan was there. Mikey. I'm just trying to gauge if there's anybody I haven't talked about yet. Haven't considered. Terry Funk. Stevie Richards was arguably one of the MVPs of the year. Unsung hero of ECW. Sandman, Sabu, Public Enemy, Tommy Dreamer, Woman, Rey Mysterio. So remember, this is the beginning of the year. WCW move over here. Alex Wright, Booker T, Arn Anderson, Bull Nakano, Benoit. Let's go in here, trying to think if I have missed anybody. Eddie, Johnny B. Bad, Kurosawa, who could ever forget. Yeah, I don't know if I'm being swayed here in terms of the roster. Let's look at WWF. Beginning of the year. Look at all the colors and masks and face paint. Jesus Christ. Spark Plug Holly. Bushwhackers were there in 96. Aldo Montoya, still waiting for my book. We got the Guns. Avatar. Yikes. Ahmed Johnson. Ahmed Johnson's a guy I haven't really talked about yet. Doomsday. What? Kane was Doomsday. Is that right? Any Doomsday fans in the chat? Was this in between Isaac Yankem and Kane? Was he Doomsday? I don't remember that. Goldust. Shout out to Goldust, by the way. Strong character throughout the year. Hunter Hearst Helmsley's just kind of getting off the floor here. Johnny Hawk. What? He was Justin Hawk Bradshaw, but I guess before that he was Johnny Hawk. Yikes. Mabel. Yeah, we're not Marty Jannetty. You know what? I think we can kind of wrap this roster up. You know what? Let's just look at the end of the year, perhaps. Right now, we're tracking WCW as the best. Nothing here is swaying me. So it's WWF at the end of the year. WCW at the end of the year. ECW at the end of the year. Talk about Mike Hawk. All right. ECW end of the year. Not a ton of changes. We got David Jericho. Of course, who could forget? James Stone has transformed into Little Guido. We got the BWO here. We got New Jack, Shane Douglas. Balls Mahoney just debuted. He's not the Balls Mahoney that we all know and love yet, though. RVD coming in was big for ECW. Huge. Kind of a small roster looking at it. That's another thing. ECW just has a tiny roster, so I don't think they could have the best roster. WCW at the end of the year. What do we got? The Barbarian. The Amazing French Canadians come in. Not a bad tag team. DDP is getting hot. Fit Finley. The Gambler. The fuck is that? Jerry Flynn. Jeff Jarrett coming in was big. Big swing there. Well, maybe not a big swing. It was a swing. In here, La Parca. Haven't really seen him much yet. Must have come in like at the very tail end of the year. Wall Street. Pedro Morales was with them. Pez Watley. Mako Satomura. Gee whiz. She has really just been wrestling for forever, hasn't she? Haven't seen her, though, on TV. Not a lot of... This isn't blowing me away watching this, right? Like we said earlier, they got a, Macho Man, Hulk Hogan. In terms of, like, the top guys, right? You got Giant. Kevin Nash. Lex Luger. Mike Enos. Like, all these really powerhouse guys. Right? What's WWF working with at the end of the year? Bart and Billy have split up. We said Ahmed Johnson. Brian Pillman coming in was big. Big. Hasn't really been realized yet. I guess they did the Pillman's got a gun angle. So maybe it has been realized. Flash Funk, Too Cold Scorpio. That's fun. That's good stuff. Jesse James is back. Al Snow's here. But he's Leaf Cassidy. Mark Marrow coming in as big. Mosh is here, huh? Interesting. I'm learning stuff. Owen Hart. Savio Vega's a reliable utility guy. The Sultan. Not all wins. Taker, Vader. I mean, The Rock coming in, which, like I said, we're not taking into account hindsight yet. But even at the beginning, it was a fun Rocky Johnson's kid. There was something there, maybe. We haven't gotten to Rocky Die yet. I'll tell you this. So that's the rosters, right? Let's lock this in here. I think WCW still has the best roster. Right? I think... And this is my logic here. It's between WCW and WWF. I think when you look at the rosters, I was like, oh, WWF actually has a really good roster in comparison to WCW. But I think WCW is utilizing the roster better. You know, Flash Funk's out there doing who gives a fuck opening match squashes. Owen Hart's great, but he's in a bullshit tag team with Bulldog. Whereas WCW, you have the Cruiserweight division, which is a constant stream of awesome matches. And then you got really strong star power up top. And some pretty good stuff in the middle that they're starting to fill in that middle with stuff like Luger, Benoit, Eddie, like I've been talking about, right? I think we're locking in best roster. Best roster. WCW. It's locked in, I think. Pretty convinced. What else we got? So this is top rated matches of 1996. This is based on the Wrestling Observer, which I know, guys. I know. Chill. People weren't grading matches on Cage Match in 1996. So this is the only, numerical kind of gauge we got, right? So of course, I don't know if you can see it. Let me zoom in a little bit. Top rated matches of 1996. In terms of the three companies that we're looking at, there was only one 5-star match, according to Dave Meltzer. And that is from ECW, Rey Mysterio versus Juventud Guerrera. 2 out of 3 falls from Big Ass Extreme Bash. I did not love this match. I thought it was a bunch of moves happening, which in 1996 it was very cutting edge for 1996. I will say that. 2 very talented guys. I wasn't super into the match. It was fun, right? I'll throw it on top 15 matches, maybe top 10. But I don't think it's number 1. But I think that does lend credence to perhaps Rey Mysterio being the Wrestler of the Year. The only reason the reason I'm tracking Mankind as the Wrestler of the Year and not Rey Mysterio is because both Rey and Mick have great matches, but I think Mankind has the character that Rey just isn't even kind of close to. I think in terms of their match quality, I think Rey has a slight edge, but in terms of character quality, Mankind has a huge edge. So overall, the net, balancing those 2 out, I think Mick Foley, for that reason, I'm tracking him as Wrestler of the Year. Rey Mysterio is definitely top 2, maybe top 3, for sure. But looking at some of these other matches, some 4.75s. We got Mind Games, Shawn versus Mankind. Solidifies my point. Rey versus Psychosis, Bash at the Beach. Ultimo Dragon versus Dean Malenko at Starrcade, which we just talked about. Great match. Ultimate Dragon versus Rey Mysterio at World War III. Maybe I think I maybe need to watch that match again. I don't remember loving it. It was good. I don't remember loving it. Survivor Series, Brett versus Stone Cold. I don't think I've talked about that enough here. Outstanding match. I don't think it's the best of the year, but I think it's very good. Very good. Shawn versus Diesel, also a 4.5. That's what we're currently tracking as the best of the year. What else we got here? 2 Cold Scorpio versus Sabu. It was fine. Dean versus Rey. Benoit versus Malenko. I did not like this match. Another match where it was just moves happening for like 40 minutes. Okay. I think we got the point here. Rey versus Super Calo with a 4-star. Interesting. All right. So those are according to Dave. I don't think it sways me yet. So now we got this. What is this? Wrestling20years.com. Best matches of 1996. Just kind of glazing over. Booking Like a Mark. What's up, buddy? Says that hearing the comparison between Mankind and Rey Mysterio for Superstar of the Year, you convinced me. I love how... Sorry, I have a thing covering it. I love how thorough you're being with it. Thorough you are being with this, really diving into each category. That's what we do here, Booking Like a Mark. Potential future guest of the Apron Bump. Looking forward to it, buddy. So, we're just kind of like a random blog. Sorry. Sniffed semen in my nose. Some other matches of the year candidates. Number 1, they got listed Shawn versus Diesel, which I agree with. Mind Games, Survivor Series. These are all matches we've talked about. Shawn versus Owen at In Your House, Rage in the Cage, which I think was the February pay-per-view. Not as good as you might think. It was a good match, but you see these two on paper in the time period, you're like, that's match of the year easy. It was just an okay match. A lot of this is doing, Shawn's building up to his main event at WrestleMania. The boyhood dream's about to come true. Owen Hart's he's not low card, but he's like in a tag team, We're past the King of Hearts. We're past any Owen Hart main event potential, unfortunately. So I think a lot of that, it wasn't as competitive, I think, as it could have been. This is also following up the collapse angle where Owen Hart on Raw kicked Shawn in the head or something, and then Shawn passed out, and it was a very dramatic angle. So a good angle leading up to it, but I think the match, it was just fine. Shawn and Bulldog, good match, not the best. Shawn and Vader. It's funny how some people think this is the worst match, and some people think it's the best match. Very polarizing. It was a good match, I thought. Not the best. Shawn and Sid. These are all matches we've talked about. Mankind versus Undertaker at King of the Ring. I don't think we've specifically talked about this one. A very good match. Very good match. They had a lot of good matches, which is why I think Mick Foley is the best of the year. I loved this 6-man match at In Your House International Incident. Shawn, Ahmed, and Sid versus Vader, Owen Hart, and Bulldog. Probably my favorite 6-man tag ever. It would either be this or Shield versus Wyatt family. But outstanding match. Awesome stuff. Not the best of the year. But probably top 3, if I'm honest. Fun match. So, I don't think I'm being swayed with match of the year, guys. Because now we're going into worst of the year. So let's pull this back up. I think I'm locking in this. Shawn Diesel, best match of the year. And you know what? I think I'm locking in Mankind, wrestler of the year. I think we're locking those in. I've heard a lot of input from different people, different sources. I think that's where we're at. Talking through it. Worst. Now, more importantly, we got to talk about the worst of the year, guys. Ultimate Warrior versus Gold. So this is according to Dave Meltzer, right? Got the same kind of database pulled up here. Gold Dust Warrior with a negative 3.5 star. That is fucking brutal. The worst match of the year, according to Dave Meltzer, a negative 3-star going towards the Doomsday Cage. Again, I hear you, Dave. But to me, it's so bad it's good almost. Conan versus One Man Gang. That was the match. So Super Brawl is what we're tracking as the worst show of the year. And this match definitely contributed to it. The negative 2-star match. Hog Wild. Hogan versus Giant with a negative 1.5. I don't agree with that at all. I thought it was a decent match. I thought it was pretty good, actually. I would probably throw a 3 at it. 3.5, maybe. Brutal. Brutal stuff. Just not to Dave's taste, I guess. Got some Nitro matches here. Another match from Super Brawl. We got Sting and Lex Luger versus the Road Warriors. We're just solidifying that Super Brawl is the worst of the year. In fact, you know what? Go back here. Let's lock that in. We're bringing up matches that I forgot happened. On top of what I already remember was awful about this show. It's pretty bad. Pretty bad. All right. I don't think any of these matches are worse than Warrior versus Goldust. Giant versus Loch Ness. That was pretty bad. But it had the spectacle appeal of it. Slamboree 96. Dick Slater and Earl Robert Eaton versus VK Wall Street and Jim Duggan. I don't remember this match at all, but I believe you. I believe you that it happened. Sandman versus Raven at November to Remember. Not a good match. Not a good match. Dave threw a negative 1 at it, which I think is a bit harsh. I don't think it was that bad, but it wasn't good. Steve McMichael versus Joe Gomez, another negative 0.5. Jose Lothario versus Jim Cornette. Look, it's not a good match, but it was short. And it was an angle. That's one of those things where it's like it was more of an angle just because it was so short. If it wasn't a real match, I wouldn't consider it. Technically it was, but like, was it though? Big ass Extreme Bash. This is Big Titan versus Judge Dredd. Big Titan, I believe, is fake Razor. I remember after this match, Big Titan got "Don't Come Back" chants, which is fun. So, but yeah, none of these. I don't think any of these are worse than Warrior and Goldust. Taking one more look. I'm surprised he doesn't have the Hogan Giant match from Super Brawl on here, unless I'm missing it. Maybe that's what he meant. Or maybe it's just so forgettable that I don't know. Yeah. What do I have as the alternatives here if I do? So this is what we got, right? Goldust Warrior, Joe Gomez, Mongo, Doomsday Cage, Undertaker, and Executioner, which was not on that list, but Fret's brought up, and I think is a good shout. I think Taker and Executioner, it was just a brawl, you know? The Mankind's involvement, like, it was a side quest for Undertaker in the overall Taker Mankind feud. It was fine for what it was. It wasn't good, but I don't think that's worst of the year. I don't think that's worst of the year. I think in comparison to what Terry Gordy was and what we got, it's bad, but I don't think it's the worst of the year. Doomsday Cage, talked about it. I think it's a so bad it's good type of thing, so I think there's some entertainment value to it. So we're going to take that off. Joe Gomez Mongo, though, was very bad. Here's a question here. Here. I'm going to throw this at you guys. Are there any positives to Goldust versus Ultimate Warrior at In Your House 7? Is there any entertainment value to Ultimate Warrior sitting in the middle of the ring, smoking a cigar, wearing a fedora, while the crowd chants homophobic slurs towards Goldust? Is there any entertainment value? Because that had a lot of pomp and circumstance to it. It had a lot of frills, right? Had a lot of stuff going on. Whereas Mongo and Joe Gomez had nothing going on. It's close. It's close. But I don't think I'm being swayed. Goldust Ultimate Warrior. We're locking it in. We're locking it in. Looking like a mark says Goldust Warrior had 0 positives. I think I might agree. I think I agree. Yikes. I'm just reliving that match. I'm reliving it, and I'm not having a good time reliving it. Mongo was still new. That's a good point, Tom. That's a good point. It wasn't like a bad match, though. Like, technically, it wasn't terrible. It was just boring, you know? So, yeah. So here's this Wrestling20years.com blog. Some of the worst matches of 1996. We got Hogan versus Macho Man. I don't remember that being very bad. This was the match where Hogan had the goofy wig and it was kind of dumb, but what do they say here? The unpleasant undertones of Liz involved, coupled with a laughably feeble giant run-in, helped mark this one down as one of the biggest wasted opportunity of the year, the largest disappointment of the year. So their take is that the potential of this match versus what actually happened was the biggest disparity. So I get that. I get that, right? Sandman versus Raven. I know we locked it in, but just one last check. Sandman Raven, another very boring match. They tried too hard to like wrestle, you know? They're wrestling. That's not what we want from Sandman and Raven. Lawler versus Roberts. This is all stuff we've talked about so far. Booty Man versus DDP. Mongo versus Joe Gomez. So they say, if you skip the first day of wrestling school, this is how it'll turn out. I can't be blamed for showing. Mongo showed no ring smarts. Neither guy had a clue what they were supposed to be doing. I still cringe at McMichael being allowed to execute a tombstone pile driver. Nobody clued him in on the real purpose of hard camera either. Like, I don't know. Mark Henry versus Jerry Lawler. I didn't think this was a bad match. It was a very simple, like, meat and potatoes match. Wasn't good enough. I mean, Mark Henry, I think he got injured shortly after this. Wasn't bad. World War III. That's something we haven't talked about a lot. I hate this match type. I hate it. World War III. I think the ending stretch to this match, though, was good enough to make it not the worst of the year. It's bottom 10, probably. But I don't know. What do we think? I think Warrior Goldust still takes the cake, though. Tom Austin says, that's WCW's fault, not the wrestlers. That's why established talent like Goldust and Warrior really deserve being labeled as the worst. That's a very good point. Very good point. WCW, it was more like the back end stuff of putting that match there that was the fault. That was the sin. Whereas Warrior and Goldust, like, they could have had a fun match, but they decided not to. They decided not to. I will defend any battle royal. That's my red flag. Yeah, it's like a different... You can't really compare a battle royal to a normal match, in my opinion. So I don't think that could really be considered worst of the year. Like, the Royal Rumble in 96 was pretty bad too, but I'm not considering that, so... All right. PWI Top 500. Now, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is like a kayfabe list, right? So number 1, we got Shawn Michaels. Number 2, The Giant. What? Interesting. I guess he didn't lose a bunch, huh? pretty prominently shown on TV. So I guess he had a good year. Because right now, Wrestler of the Year, we're tracking Mankind. Did I lock that in yet? I think I did, but just for shits and giggles. In case there's anybody I just completely forgot about. We talked about Ray, Ahmed Johnson, Dean Malenko, Goldust. Yeah, no one here is really swaying me. So we'll avoid that. Wrestler of the Year list. What is this? I think it's just an pro wrestling superblog.wordpress.com. Let's see here. Let's go down to number 1 here. See what they got. See what they got cooking. Otani. They got Rey Mysterio above Mankind. I don't even see Mankind on here. They might just be taking it in-ring into account, though. They got Too Cold Scorpio, which I don't agree with. Number 5, that's crazy. Liger. Luger, number 10. Interesting. I think Luger probably... they have Mankind at number 15. So here's 2 guys that I haven't really considered for Wrestler of the Year that much. Lex Luger and Steve Austin. Lex Luger. Let's look at these recommended matches. Versus Steve Regal on Nitro. Scott Norton. Like, the match with the Giant at Starrcade was great. And I think he's going to have a very strong 97. He might have a big case in 97 for Wrestler of the Year. I don't think we're quite there yet in 96, though. I don't think we're quite there. Top 10. I'll put him in top 10, not number 1. And maybe that's something we do next year. Maybe we have, like, a top list. Like, maybe a top 5 list. Right? Instead of just number 1. Something to consider. And Steve Austin. So obviously the Bret Hart match at Survivor Series was tremendous. Stone Cold's also a guy, like, you throw him on Raw, he'll just have an awesome match out of nowhere. Like, I was watching Raw the other night, and it was a random ass tag match. I think it was Bret Hart and Savio Vega versus Steve Austin and Farouk. This match was awesome. For no reason, it was awesome. So his quality is something to be said, right? It's something to take into account. Another top 10 guy. Steve's in work is great all throughout 96, but half the year he doesn't have any heat. He doesn't get hot until King of the Ring in, what was this, June? July? But even then, it's not like he wins King of the Ring, cuts the Austin's 316 promo. It's not like immediately after that he's on fire. Like, no, he's still facing Yokozuna on the pre-show at SummerSlam. He's still fucking around with Savio Vega for goddamn years, it feels like. It's not until the feud with Bret where he really starts cooking, and that's not until October-ish, November. So, great stuff at the end of the year for Steve. Again, a watch for 97, but not 96. Not his year. It all depends what you look for in wrestling, yeah? I mean, I'm doing my best to kind of take into account all angles, but no, you're definitely right. So we got thesportster.com, 5 best WCW wrestlers of 96 and the 5 worst. Again, just kind of seeing if I've missed anybody. Best, Ric Flair. Worst, Big Bubba Rogers. Best, Kevin Nash. Worst, Vincent. Vincent didn't really do anything, though. Best, Roddy Piper. He had 1 match. Worst, John Tenta. Hey, man, that silver dollar on a pole match is a guilty pleasure of mine, so I can't agree with that. Jim Duggan. Jim Duggan's kind of faded away a little bit. If he were to continue to be as prominent as he was in the beginning of the year, I think he's a strong candidate for worst of the year. But fortunately, he's stayed out of the limelight, so I don't think his negative impact was felt to a great magnitude, if that makes sense. Best, Hogan. Hogan's a guy you could consider the best. You can also consider the worst. To me, he's definitely not the worst. From a character standpoint, you could definitely argue he's the best. But I think you pit him against Mankind. Mankind has a way stronger match catalog, whereas Hogan might slightly edge him on the character. But even that, like, Hogan as a character, like, yeah, the heel turn was insane for the time, for sure. Very impactful. But the quality, like, his promos, I talked about this a lot on my last Starrcade episode. He's very, like, he's still, like, red and yellow Hogan, just as a heel. Like, to me, he doesn't embrace the NWO, like, the personality, like, the ethos and, like, the personality of the NWO. I don't think he blends that well with it. That's just my opinion. But to me, that's what's keeping him from being the best of the year. Worst the Booty Man. Yeah. 1996 Wrestling Hall of Shame. So this is the last thing I got pulled up here. Some of the bad stuff. WWF Tag Division. It's just always been beyond an afterthought. Beyond an after. We got Doug Furnace and Phil LaFawn coming in. 2 names I haven't mentioned yet. So that's something. Shoot fights in ECW. Yeah, it's always fucking cringe. The Polar Paul Varlins. Who could forget the Polar Bear versus Taz? Loch Ness, Mass Transit, Doomsday Cage, Hog Wild, just as a show in general. That's an interesting... I encourage you guys to listen to the Hog Wild 1996 episode, because it is a very interesting show, because it's like a fun show, but like on paper, it's not that great. You know? Like match to match, it's not great, but as a pay-per-view and as a whole, I love the vibes of it. Fake Diesel, fake Razor. Terrible, dude. Terrible. I mean, this pair, you could argue, is worst of the year. In fact. I haven't even touched this. So we got Jerry Lawler is who we're tracking as the worst. Fake D's. Rays. Still WWF. So for the points, doesn't really matter, but it's for the principle of it, you know? Billionaire Ted. Hot start to the year with the Billionaire Ted skits. This is what I'm saying. WCW main events, they were all like... Not all bad, but not a lot of good. Not a lot of good at the top, and that means a lot when like your heavy hitters, your big angles don't hit. Like I think there's some good stuff like Fall Brawl 96. All the stuff with Sting was great. And a lot of the NWO stuff was good, but like the matches, like the main event pay-per-view matches, just not a lot of success with those, I don't think. ECW World Title picture, yeah, the title just kind of been hot potatoed a little bit. Doesn't have a lot of weight to it, I don't think, right now. Battle Bull stunk. WWF undercard is kind of what I'm talking about. In terms of their roster not being the best. Just wasn't utilized very well. Piper Hogan without the title was fucking ridiculous. Again, just talked about that recently. All right. So, I think we've done all the research. I've listened to you guys. I've listened to people all across the community. I think it's time to lock this in. I think it's time to lock it in. Who is the hardest promotion of 1996? Man. Best pay-per-view of the year. So all these green ones we've locked in, right? Best of the year, it's a matter of WrestleMania versus Fall Brawl to me. You know what? Let me pull these up on Cage Match. Let's get a side-by-side comparison of these two shows, just to make sure I didn't forget about anything. Pull it up here in a second. Yeah, ECW 50% disaster every pay. I agree. Every show. Cage match. All right. Let's pull you up. So WrestleMania. We're gonna ignore the free-for-all bullshit. We got that 6-man. Was pretty good. A good opener. Camp Cornette versus Ahmed, Jake Roberts, Yokozuna. The backlot brawl was a thread throughout the show. Very entertaining stuff, I thought. Savio Vega, Steve Austin was basically just a match to happen in the background while we keep tabs on the White Bronco, all that shit, right? Barely a match. Not a good match here. The Ultimate Warrior squashing Triple H, Diesel, Undertaker, Brett, Shawn. So yeah, nothing I really forgot here. I'm looking at this on paper. I don't know. I gave it an A. This is right after I watched the show, right? That's how I felt. So I don't think I can change the grade. I'm looking at this on paper. I don't know if this is an A show. But maybe it is. I don't know. Whereas Fall Brawl. DDP versus Chavo. Not a crazy great match, but DDP looked awesome. So I loved it. Scott Norton versus Ice Train. Silly. Whatever. Conan versus Juventud. This is kind of the debut, the pay-per-view debut of the Conan that we all know. You know, the Cholo, for lack of a better term. Conan just kicked the shit out of Juventud for like 20 minutes and it was awesome. Benoit versus Jericho was very good. Ray versus Super Calo. I saw this on one of the best of lists. I think Dave gave it a 4-star, you know, whatever. I thought it was okay. Not one of Ray's best, but a middling Ray match is better than most. So, Harlem Heat versus the Nasty Boys. I remember this being okay. Savage Giant was fun, actually. I forgot about that. Probably Giant's best match of the year, I have to say. And then the War Games. You know, the match itself was whatever, but it was the ending angle of Sting leaving. Surfer Sting is no more. Man. Does Fall Brawl take it? Does Fall Brawl take the best pay-per-view of the year? I think it might. WrestleMania has like the spectacle of it, right? The backlot brawl. Of these two shows, that's the most unique. I know WCW had War Games and stuff, but I'm looking at this Iron Man match. Like I said, just the first like 45 minutes is absolute dreck. Again, the story made sense, but as a viewer, Fall Brawl doesn't have a squash match. I mean, some of those matches are kind of extended squashes, but you're right. But it was the squash, Ultimate Warrior squashing Triple H was a fun moment. Say what you want about it. Crowd was reacting to it. It was the return of the Warrior. Like I said, we're not looking at this in hindsight. We're just looking at the moment. Warrior's back. Oh, man. Diesel Undertaker was good. Damn, dude. I think we might throw it to Fall Brawl. I think from a story perspective, I don't think anything matched the Fall Brawl War Games match. You have the really technical stuff in Benoit, Jericho, Ray, and Super Calo. Fun matches in DDP versus Chavo, Conan versus Juventud. I don't totally remember this tag team title match. I don't think it was terrible, nor do I think it was great. I might give it to Fall Brawl, guys. Fuck. Yep, I'm giving it to Fall Brawl. We're doing it. We're doing it. Yeah, that's a good point, Tom. WrestleMania is supposed to deliver. Fall Brawl, like you said, it went hard and it didn't have to. It went hard and it didn't have to. We're locking it in. We're locking it in. Now the scoreboard. All right, my face is covering ECW, but I don't think ECW has 4 points. WWF has 11. WCW has 9. Actually, let me switch to... There we go. There we go. All right. Best overall in-ring. So the poll I put on Twitter, people thought WCW, like by a pretty wide margin, I think. People thought WCW was the best. Actually, no, this is the one that was kind of close. But WCW... People think about WCW 96, you think about the Cruiserweights. And I hear you. I just don't think that's enough. Ugh. But there's... The main events are the main events. It's a lot of hoopla going on. Some of the hoopla's good. Roddy Piper and Hogan was a pretty good match. Fall Brawl, like we just talked about. Good. It was a good overall package. Oh, yeah? Bash at the Beach. Hogan versus Giant at Hog Wild. I thought was good. Lex is starting to get hot. Even the Dungeon of Doom... I don't know, I'm starting... I don't know if it's a guilty pleasure. They're starting to grow on me a little bit. The Dungeon of Doom and the Horseman feud. There's some good stuff in there. What else? Tag team division is the shits, but it's kind of shits all across the board. So that's a wash. I'll say WCW might be better than WWF. In that category. The mid-card titles, I think WWF and the Intercontinental title is stronger than both the US and TV titles combined. Mark Marrow and Mark Marrow is doing a bunch of good stuff. Goldust with Triple H. Steve and Brett, you gotta take into account. Taker, Mankind. Sean's a big driving force in best overall in ring. Character-wise, this isn't Sean's strongest year, but he delivered in the ring. Also, like talking about like TV, because a lot of this we're looking at the pay-per-views. TV, I think WWF has a better product in ring than WCW. That's a tough one, man. Best in ring. It's between WWF and WCW. I'm inclined to go WWF. What do we think? Maybe we come back to that. Worst of the year, Ultimate Warrior. So what? It's between him. Worst of the year, it's between Warrior. Who else? can't really think of anybody. I guess maybe like a Sandman wasn't that great. I don't think he was that bad. Fake, Rays, D's. Who else? No one's really jumping out at me. Booty Man. Booty Man, he faded away eventually. And his involvement was undercard. So, I don't know. I don't think his... See, a lot of these guys, they, like, made an impact, but it wasn't lasting. I think Warrior's impact was the most lasting of them. I don't think Sandman belongs in there. I think Warrior's impact was the most felt. Like, it had the biggest spotlight on it, which I think is what gives him the edge. I think we do it. I mean, you could throw Executioner in there, but again, he came and went very quickly. In and out. Have a quick B-Show pay-per-view match, and skedaddle. Yeah. We're locking him in. Worst of the year. Out of ring. Gimmicks, promo, storylines. We have ECW, but the question is, because WWF, I don't think. You got Mankind and Taker, and you got Steve Austin, just in general. Steve Rhett. Steve Pillman. Outside of that, there's not a lot of great characters going on. Goldust is here, but he's kind of floating. What else? Not a lot of good outside of that. Bret Hart's back. Him and Shawn are cooking, but they're just starting to cook. We just turned the burner on. Oh. So ECW and WCW. The question is the NWO significant enough to warrant them taking this? And here's the thing. I think ECW, the promos, are far and beyond anything that WWF or WCW is doing. Tom Austin, he says, NWO is the best gimmick regardless of when it started. ECW has defined characters that connect with the fans, which is a great way of phrasing that. Really what it comes down to is NWO better than anything. Is it big enough to supersede all of the individual things ECW is doing? And to me, I don't think it is, unfortunately. I think ECW locks this one. I think we're locking ECW as the best overall. But I do think, individually, of the individual gimmicks, I do think NWO is the strongest. It's hard, like, it's lasted the test of time, or it's stood the test of time, whatever that phrase is. NWO, best character storyline. Worst character storyline, I think it's WWF either way. It's between Jerry Lawler, Fake Diesel, Razor. Here's what I'll say. I think Lawler, the matches have been fine. Some of the matches have been fine. Fake Diesel, Fake Diesel, Fake Razor. Pose, no positives. It makes me mad that it was even a thing. You know what? We're throwing it there. It's not going to change the points. It's still WWF, but it's the worst. So we got WWF with 11 points. WCW with 9 points. ECW with 4. Fake Diesel, Fake Razor was the worst because it literally helped the enemy. That's a great point. Great point. Solidifies my choice here. Excitement going into 1997. The NWO is cooking. The cruiserweights are giving you consistently great stuff. Dungeon of Doom and Horseman is fine. Lex Luger's hot. Hey, the women's division. Like we said, no hindsight. Maybe that's going to be something. ECW. You kind of know what you're getting, right? I don't think there's any extra. You got Taz and Sabu, right? It's just something that they've been building to for over a year. So that's something to lend towards the excitement. But I think that's pretty much, it's pretty much it. I don't think ECW would get this. WWF. Sid's a great character. He's the champion. I don't think there's any. They're kind of starting to build towards Sid and Taker. Shawn and Brett. Seeds are being planted there. So there's some excitement in a rematch. Taker and Mankind still kind of going. It's kind of it, though. Mark Merrow's IC champion, I think, right? Or no, Triple H is. He's feuding with a newly babyface Goldust. Farouk and Ahmed. I think WCW. I think ultimately, like I said earlier, WCW is the most anything that can happen promotion. It's the most volatile promotion in conjunction with the great cruiserweight stuff and a lot of other matches that are really good. I think WCW holds on to this. Excitement going into 97. So, what it all comes down to, folks. Best overall in-ring. It's not ECW. It just isn't. It comes down to WWF and WCW. Whoever takes this is the hardest promotion of 1996. Ooh. Man. So we were talking through it earlier. In-ring. WCW has I know I'm being repetitive here, but we got to lock this down here. WCW had the cruiserweights. WWF did not have anything to match that. Tag team division. Both are kind of equal. Both are inconsequential. Women's division, neither is really doing anything. Main events in-ring. We're talking in-ring. Main events are stronger in WWF than WCW. Mid-card, though. I think WWF, they have better finishes. The matches seem to flow better. And I think there's more consistency in WWF. I think WCW's peaks may be higher, but I don't know. Like I said, if Shawn Michaels wasn't here, it'd be WCW. But Shawn Michaels gave you consistent world title main events that were great. We're talking Shawn Diesel. We're talking Shawn Bulldog. Mankind. Even the Sid match is pretty good. The Vader match is pretty good. You got Steve and Brett. Steve and Savio, the strap match. Mark Merrow and Triple H, like things like that. Diesel in the beginning of the year was great. Match with The Undertaker. Owen. Do we lock it in? I'm gonna mark this green, but that's not official. It's not official until we hit this button. Is this where we leave it? I think it might be. I think we might do it. I'm gonna do it. You don't think I'm gonna do it? I think we maybe, yeah. My goodness. My goodness. They did it, folks. The little dog that could. Nobody thought they could do it. Nobody. The little engine that could. Just a little rinky-dink company from Stamford, Connecticut. Everybody doubted them. Billionaire Ted. Waylon Mercy. Mabel. All this stuff from 95. Nobody thought that Vince McMahon could rebound. Everybody told Vince McMahon in 1996, there's no way you're going to be the hardest promotion in 1996. Well, big egg on their face. Oh my goodness. Here's the trophy. Here it is. I can't grab it, but you see it. There's a penis on it. Let's go. Hardest promotion of 1996 goes to the Fed. Because, everybody, the Fed always wins. My goodness. What a triumph. What a journey. Oh, man. Fantastic. Fantastic. Does it, folks? I'm be honest, I've gone way longer than I thought I would. There's a lot to dig into. A lot of input from the community, which I appreciate. That's where we are. That's where we're at. So 1997 is fast approaching, gang. We got Royal Rumble 97 coming up here in a few weeks on the Apron Bump. Should be a good old time. 97 is a year that Bartholomew needs a raise. Fuck him. Don't tell him that. He'll get a raise. In this economy, Tom? Yeah, you can hit a few buttons, but yeah, 1997 is a year that I've never watched. I didn't get into wrestling until like 98, 99, so I've seen a few things from 97, maybe a Survivor Series clip here and there. But the bulk of it I've not seen, so I'm very excited. A lot of people say 97 is their favorite year of wrestling. It's a very crucial year. Very impactful year. And I'm excited to get into it. I'm excited to continue this hardest promotion battle in 1997. Like I said, there'll be some changes. You know, by the way, guys, if you're listening and you're not in the Discord, I strongly suggest you join it. We talk about this kind of stuff. Any changes we might make to this. Scoring changes. Kind of process changes, whatever it is. And we'll see who wins in 1997. But Daddy's going to be purchasing a title belt from the World Wrestling Federation. Don't know which one. I'm between two. So what are even the options, right? WWE, and the question is also, I would think I should purchase a belt from 1996. Like, I shouldn't go and get, like, the spinner belt, you know? Like, it should be either the Winged Eagle world title, the Intercontinental title, the tag team title, or is that it? I guess the women's title? I don't know. And we're not getting the Bart Gunn title. We're not getting the tag team titles. It's between the Winged Eagle and the IC. I'll unveil it once I purchase it. I grew up, the era I grew up in was Big Eagle. You know, it was the Attitude Era belt. It was the one that Stone Cold and Triple H had. That's where my nostalgia goes. So Winged Eagle never really hit for me. The Winged Eagle feels like a small belt. in my opinion. I know a lot of people love it. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I don't know if it would make my top 5 world titles, though, as far as belts. I love the IC belt, though. So, might be a spoiler for which one I'm going to get. I really haven't decided. I almost, thought about buying one for this, but the score actually swayed more than I thought it would. WCW almost took it. So I'm glad I didn't. But once I get it and it arrives at the Apron Bump Studios, I'll be sure to let you guys know. But I see, because I'm a workhorse. You're goddamn right, Tom Austin. You're goddamn right. I am the Mark Marrow of wrestling podcasting in a lot of ways. I'm very wet. So with that, I think that about does it. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I might drop this as a podcast bonus episode, maybe. We'll see. But if you're listening live, if you're listening after the fact, watching after the fact, I appreciate you tuning in. Please give the video a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you're not already, ring the bell, all that shit, right? Drop podcast episodes every Wednesday covering this era as well as other eras. TNA, Ring of Honor, Progress Wrestling. Hey, by the way, speaking of Progress Wrestling, speaking of live, I'm going to be doing more live content here coming soon. Sunday, July 28th. 28th? Hold on, let me double check. I thought it was the 29th, but I guess it would be the 28th, right? I will be doing a live watch-along of Progress Wrestling Chapter 169. It's going to be my first foray into the current product of Progress Wrestling. Yes, Sunday, July 28th, 3 p.m. GMT, which would make that 10 a.m. Eastern. So 10 a.m. Eastern, I will be watching Progress Wrestling Chapter 169 live right here on YouTube, on Twitter, X, whatever the hell. And if you use the code, let me make sure I have this right. I've been in communication with Progress Wrestling. I want people to experience this promotion. I think it's a great company. They put out great matches, great cards. I haven't seen a lot of the current product, but I'm excited to check it out. Just look up this promo code to make sure I have it right. If you go to Demand Progress, if you just Google Demand Progress, I have it linked in my on my Twitter as well. It's their streaming service they use. Let me make sure I have this right. And use the code WatchProgress5. All one word, Watch Progress and the number 5. You will get 50% off of your subscription. That if you do a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription. That applies to both things. So, not that one. Demand Progress Plus. Demand Progress Plus. Let's see here. Check these prices. So without the discount, it's only $8 a month, which is already a great deal, right? Let me see here. $8 a month. So if you do the monthly, $4. Even if you just watch the one show with me, that's more than worth it, more than a steal. But you get access to their entire catalog, not just Progress, but other promotions as well are included in this. Sorry, I'm just looking to see. You get access to Progress Wrestling shows, latest shows, old shows. You get to join the community. You can cancel anytime. This applies to both the monthly and the yearly. Yearly generally is $80 a year, which amounts to about a little under $7 a month. But if you use the discount code WatchProgress5, you are paying $40 for a year's worth of content, which amounts to $3, a little over $3 a month if you go with the yearly. 50% off yearly, monthly. You know the deal. I don't know how many different ways I can say it. But do that to check out Chapter 169, Devil on My Shoulder from Progress Wrestling. We're going to watch it along on stream. I'm going to check it out. You should too. It'll be a good old time. And I will also be live streaming. I don't know if it'll be on here. It might be on TikTok. It might be both. But keep an eye out on social media. Follow me at Apron Bump on all the social medias. I tested it out last night. I got a little SmackDown 2 on the PlayStation 2. Or it might be a PS1 game, I forget. But we'll be streaming that at some point too. So that'll be fun. I had a memory card issue last night, which is why I'm not... Because I want to do like a season, career, whatever the hell. The memory... I think I need to just take it out and blow in it. You know what I'm saying? But keep an eye out for that. Keep tabs on me on all the social media. And with that, I think I'll love you. And I think I'll leave you. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Congratulations to the World Wrestling Federation for becoming the hardest promotion of 1996. Will they maintain that title in 97? You're just going to stay tuned and find out. Love you guys. Big ol' smooches all over your face.